Phillip Schofield, the Blameless Narcissist. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. It's never the narcissist's fault. This is because that mindset is necessary to ensure that the narcissist always has control. Instead, it's your fault, or its fault, or the weather's fault, or the dog's fault. It's always someone or something else's fault and not the fault of the narcissist. By rejecting any sense of culpability or accountability that assists the narcissist with the maintenance of control and the nullification of threat to control, and is supported by the victim mentality that the narcissist has. Some narcissists, of course, present with a much larger victim mentality than others. Phillip Schofield is a well-known television celebrity in the United Kingdom, and I have, in a separate series, explained why he is a narcissist. He fell from grace as a consequence of a scandal in relation to him having an affair, in effect, with a young male, an individual that he met who was a minor when he met this individual, and an individual that he developed an inappropriate relationship with. No criminal conviction has arisen from the conduct, but it forced Schofield to quit his job on This Morning, a prominent morning television programme in the United Kingdom, when it emerged that he lied about the relationship that he'd had with a runner on the programme. This behaviour demonstrated much of his narcissism, the sense of entitlement to engage in such a relationship, the fact that he kept it hidden from his wife, that he maintained a facade of being this pleasant and well-meaning individual that butter wouldn't melt in his mouth, whereas instead he engaged in predatory behaviour, taking advantage of a clear imbalance in power between him, the much older celebrity, and an employee of the show on which he worked who was much younger than him. Schofield has plenty of money, and he disappeared for a period of time. But now, like all narcissists, he just cannot stay away. He has emerged on a Channel 5 television programme, and a review of his behaviour on this show called Castaway, which apparently is meant to be the start of his TV comeback, demonstrates yet more of his narcissism. Phillip Schofield, reports Anita Singh in the Telegraph newspaper, has blamed homophobia for the scandal that ended his career, saying he would have never been treated the same way and he would have received a pat on the back for having an affair with a woman. Let's pause there. Schofield is a mature man. He was the star of the show. He'd worked in television for decades. He was highly paid. He held a prominent position. And what did he do? He decided to cheat on his wife. He decided that he would have a relationship with a much younger individual. He would also do so abusing his position of power, abusing his position within the organisation, and in effect utilise his star power and the prominence of his role to cause that individual to have an affair with him. He also then lied about the existence of the relationship. Homophobia didn't make him lie, he lied. Homophobia didn't make him groom a young employee, he did. Homophobia didn't cause him to engage in a scandal which ended his career on This Morning, he did. But typical of the behaviour of the narcissist, it can't be his fault. He's blameless, and instead his narcissism causes him to say, oh, the reason why there was a scandal and the reason that my career ended, it was homophobia. The fact that I'm a homosexual, they've got it in for me. That is ridiculous. Whilst there are homophobes, most people don't really care these days about the fact that somebody is gay. Gay people have been around since time immemorial, and there's a greater degree of tolerance, and particularly in relation to the entertainment industry, than Schofield is suggesting. And this is a typical example of a narcissist that is blaming something else for his behaviour rather than his behaviour itself. The report continues, with Schofield having been forced to quit his job on ITV's This Morning when it emerged he had lied, lack of accountability, about a relationship with a runner who was more than 30 years his junior. In a new TV programme which he hopes will be the beginning of his comeback, he says, "Strangely, I think another TV presenter or two might have done exactly the same thing. Difference is, heterosexual." He's seeking to triangulate and blame shift. It's not an unusual thing in the gay world for there to be a difference in age groups. That's not that unusual in the straight world. But if that had been the case with me and it had been a woman, pat on the back, well done, mate. This also demonstrates an arrogance, because there'd be many people that would actually say, "You're 30 years older than this woman, that's inappropriate. You got to know this woman when she was a child, that's inappropriate. You've abused your position, a position of power, there's a clear power imbalance between the two of you, that is inappropriate." But of course, he doesn't see the inappropriateness of his behaviour because his narcissism blinds him to it. Instead, what happens is his narcissism says, "Philip, you're the victim. You've not done anything wrong. The reason why they have mocked you and the reason why people have condemned you is because they're homophobes." No. The reason why he's being condemned is because he lied to his wife. He cheated on his wife. He lied to his employer. He had an affair with someone who's much younger than him, and he abused his position of power. That's why people criticised him. Nothing to do with homophobia. He described the affair as unwise and not sensible, but said, "Is it enough to absolutely destroy someone? Literally destroy them?" Well, you haven't literally been destroyed, Schofield, because you're there living and breathing and you've appeared on television and you've still got plenty of money in the bank. So that's the melodrama and victimhood of your narcissism coming to the fore. Schofield makes his claim in Castaway, a 3-part Channel 5 programme in which he is marooned on a desert island for 10 days without a film crew. Some might say if only it could be made permanent. He records himself speaking to the camera and uses the opportunity to condemn the ITV colleagues who turned their backs on him when the scandal broke, branding them cowards and shits. Insult. Nullification of threat to control caused by their seen betrayal. Schofield came out as gay in 2020 and was initially supported by Holly Willoughby, his This Morning co-presenter. However, she cut ties with him in May last year, threat to control, when stories emerged of his affair with a junior staff member, which he had previously denied. Denial, the first line of the twin lines of the narcissistic defence. Accusing unnamed colleagues of betrayal, Schofield said, "People who I thought were my friends, they just went, that's like, what the hell? I've been chucked under a bus," victim mentality, "and I could drive the same bus over so many people. But I'm not that sort of person, I never have been. Holier than thou." He said of his time in the studio, "I loved being there. Suddenly the place became hostile to me and it was heartbreaking." Pity play, threat to control. When you throw someone under a bus, you've got to have a really good reason to do it. Brand ambition is not good enough. It's not a good enough reason to throw somebody under a bus. It's hard to come to terms with the fact that the people you thought you knew were not the people you knew. They might say the same about you, Philip, but of course you're showing your hypocrisy here. They had completely different agendas. Man alive, people can be fake. They can be so fake with you when it's all going so well, and suddenly utter betrayal. What do you mean, like holding yourself out as having a happy heterosexual marriage when in fact you're homosexual? That kind of fakery? Is that what you're talking about, Philip? Once again, demonstrating, of course, his hypocrisy. Schofield and Willoughby were on-screen partners for 14 years on This Morning and described each other as best friends, regularly holidaying together with their families. In Castaway, Schofield also lays into other figures at ITV. He said, "Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of amazing people in morning television. I think there are only 3 shits." Insult. One of them is a coward who never stepped up in Qgate, when Schofield and Willoughby were accused of Q-jumping at Queen Elizabeth II's lying in state, sense of entitlement. One of them is a coward because they never stepped up when I was being battered by one journalist who thought I got them fired, but in fact it was the other person, this person in telly, that got them fired but never said. And the other one is just brand orientated. Not what you expect, not what you think you're going to get. He also criticised his management company for dumping him. Thus, here we have a bitter man, a bitter narcissist, who, of course, sees himself as entirely blameless and the victim of other people's behaviours, completely unable to take accountability for his own actions and realise that it is his lies, his grooming, his inappropriate conduct that led to him losing his position, for him being fired, and for him ultimately being condemned by many individuals. The fact is, the Castaway programme also features contributions from Steph, Schofield's wife, and Molly and Ruby, their 2 daughters. Molly, who works as her father's publicist, said, "I would love people to understand what's actually happened and forgive him for a mistake." It's very kind-hearted of her and understandable that she would be supportive of her father. Schofield claimed he won't sit on a sofa again or work for ITV, but hinted he wants to return to television, saying, "I've got telly in my bones." Well, of course he wants to return to television, as has been shown by him doing this programme. He's utilised it as a vehicle to smear people, to lash out at them, to nullify those threats to control. And of course, he misses being the subject of so much attention by appearing on television, because his narcissism wants that vehicle to enable him to assert control over people and to receive fuel. He said his comments about former colleagues would be interpreted as a mad rant, dismissiveness, but said he didn't care, haughtiness. Giving his reasons for doing the Channel 5 show, he said, "The good thing is, when you do a programme like this and you do it just for yourself, you have nothing to lose. They've taken pretty much everything. Reputation, dignity, legacy, everything anyway." Again, blame shifting, it's everybody else's fault, a complete inability on his part to recognise that he was the one that caused him to lose his reputation, to lose his dignity, to lose his legacy. The fact is, Schofield was the one that was in a position of power, that he met the boy when he worked for ITV, when he was just an 18-year-old runner, and he actually met him prior to that when he was a minor. He basically has caused a problem for that young man, who, of course, his silence he has bought by the utilisation of paying him with a significant NDA. Schofield adds, "I'm not bleating." "Yes, you are. I'm just getting it off my chest. I've said my piece, and anyone who's bitter about that, honestly, you can fuck off." Dismissiveness. So here we have a self-pitying narcissist who's entirely blameless as per his worldview, completely unable to accept that he is the one that caused the problems for himself, and blames other people, insulting them, and claims that he's a victim of homophobia. Well, let's dive below the line to see if there's much sympathy for him, to see if people accept this charade that he's engaged in. Ian Biddle writes, "He's a spiteful little weasel with an overdeveloped sense of his own importance, a typical queen." Stephen Loss writes, "Please stop giving this moron publicity." Cheese on toast. Shame the young man, who he'd known for a long time before he turned 18 and who he had a position of power over, is unable to give his version of events due to the NDA he had to sign. S. Carlyle. What an astonishingly arrogant and self-centered piece of work he is. Shame he wasn't marooned on that island for good. Christine Sanderson. The way Schofield was treated as a hero by the media when he came out, despite having betrayed his wife in the most hideous, treacherous manner, was sickening. Clearly that kind of adoration went to his head and he felt entitled to lie and cheat. Well, actually, it didn't go to his head. It has always gone to his head because of his narcissism. John Curran writes, "It was inevitable that that card would be played." Christine Sanderson. Vile liar and clearly not a drop of remorse. Roland Nelder, ironically, he's the one who's bitter. Lynn Cobb writes, "It happened because you're a deceitful piece of work, lied to your wife and family and the public for decades, just so you could have the financial and power rewards of being a celebrity. I hope you start to get the message that the public want nothing to do with you. So I agree with Bob. Go crawl back under your rock." John Smith, "He's just hammered the last nails into his own coffin with all this and probably delighted the makers of his TV programme with his self-humiliation." Bob Cheeseman betrayed his wife, lied to the public, has a thing for young boys, manipulative and deceitful. We've not missed you. Crawl back under your rock, you wrong'un. South Coast Soul, the typical narcissistic celebrity with a healthy dose of sleaze thrown in. Hugh Ross, he truly thinks he's important to us mere mortals. Narcissistic clown. Observations in a similar vein, which demonstrates that this is a narcissist who's using the vehicle of a TV program to try and elicit sympathy and to condemn those that he believes has betrayed him, failing completely to recognise that it is his own behaviour that has caused the problem, and engaging in the self-pitying, condemning victim mentality that is common with certain types of narcissist, that he blames everybody else and everything else other than himself. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.